What's going on, everybody? It's Bill Bailey with today's Boondoggle. And real quick housekeeping note, if you're watching us on YouTube or watching us on Rumble, please hit that follow and subscribe button. If you're listening to us on whichever podcast platform you prefer, please hit that follow and subscribe button. Helps us with our algorithms and lets us continue to bring you more interviews like we have today. And today is a very special day because it was funny. We said this back in episode 100. I'm shocked that we made it 100 episodes. And now here we are, episode 200 of today's Boondoggle. And I'm a little biased being retired Navy. I'm keeping it sailor strong with a gentleman I had the pleasure of meeting this year at the Incarceration Music Festival, Mr. Master Chief Pat Otis. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for the warm welcome, and it's great to be on here for your 200th episode with a fellow sailor. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. Um, and I'm grateful that Mr. Danny Hayes, was kind enough to introduce us and at the Incarceration Festival, and so we were able to make this happen. But before we get into how you got there and how we got there, I like to go back and get a little bit of a timeline. So, like, originally, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Originally, I think I wanted to be a gangster. I wasn't quite sure. I went to high school in Middlebury, Vermont. I graduated 75 out of 75, so uh, the last person to graduate. I had also followed the Grateful Dead for a couple of years, so I was just kind of on a journey, and I got really lucky by joining the military, and specifically the Navy. Shout out to Vincent Cobbler, the partially drunk sailor I met at a party, who convinced me to join the Navy. So that's kind of how I got to the Navy, where I am now.
Yeah, kind of, you know, partially drunk and sailor kind of goes hand in hand. Um, so, like, he
Yeah.
was kind of like he kind of pointed you towards the recruiting office then.
Well, I would say initially, so I was living in and out of the University of Vermont's college girls' dorm. Uh, and for those that can't see this, I'm definitely not a girl. I had a unique living situation.
You're like
And I,
Jack Tripper, huh, from Three's
yeah,
Company?
yeah, I'd gotten into a little bit of trouble. And they had made the strong recommendation that I looked at the military recruiters. And so I begrudgingly went from Middlebury, Vermont to Burlington, which is about an hour trip to go see the recruiters. And, I walked in and went to go talk to the Marine Corps because everyone I knew had joined the United States Marine Corps. And this guy was on the phone just tearing someone up. And I made it about 0.3 seconds in that office. It's like, that doesn't quite seem to be what I'm looking for. Uh, Went to go see the Army guy, couldn't find him anywhere in the office, and just turned around and walked out. I walked out, and this guy comes walking up, and he's in the Johnny Cash's, which I don't know if people know what those are now, but it's a black tie, black shirt, black pants, black core frames, white cover. And he asked me for a cigarette, and he's like, oh, where are you going? I was like, I'm headed back to Middlebury. I was looking for the recruiters. He's like, well, you thought about joining the Navy? I was like, I don't know anything about the Navy. He's like, do you like to party? He's like, yeah, I like to party. He's like, all right, well, let's go inside, talk a little bit, and maybe we'll go party this afternoon. I was like, okay. And uh, you know,
Nice.
uh, yeah, I mean, so the Navy became super serious right away for me, and I got lucky. I wound up coming into the Navy to be a mess specialist. Uh, got into a little bit of trouble in boot camp and lost that opportunity, and then became a gas systems mechanic. So I went to boot camp in 1995 at Great Lakes, Illinois. At the time, I think there were 3 options. I didn't know there were 3 other options. They sound amazing compared to Great Lakes.
Yeah. I remember that my buddy graduated from Orlando or whatever, or
Yeah,
Florida.
someone got to go to San Diego. That's what I heard. My buddy, he went to San Diego. He said it was nothing but, beach weather and relaxation.
Yep, I was Great Lakes, so with you. So I didn't get that option. But real quick, I wanted to backtrack. So,
Mhm.
all right, other than like living with the women in the dorms in college, what were you originally going for?
To college? I didn't go to college.
Oh, you were
No,
just a guest, so you weren't even going to college.
no, I was completely a guest. I was doing everything that I probably shouldn't have been doing, and it just didn't. It just. Uh, I would say I was living a pretty unrestricted life, and I
Following
guess
the
it's
dead and
yeah, doing just just being I guess like a standard 18, 19-year old, kind of exploring the world. Didn't get myself into enough trouble not to get a security clearance, but got myself into enough trouble to get a recommendation not to be doing that anymore. So I got
nice.
lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, the Navy. I kind of got a little bit of a similar story. How
Mm.
I ended up in the Navy. But they seem to embrace us. Just you know, get on the phone with a lieutenant. I promise I won't do that again. Which is this BS.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll let you in, and then if it was drinking related and involved women or something, it was just like it seemed like that you were already laying the groundwork.
Yeah. You're going places, kid. I was like, I'm not, I feel like you don't understand. Like the cops told me to come talk to you. They're like, oh, we know. We have a whole bunch of you.
Yeah, and we put you all on a ship in the middle of the ocean
It's going to be
together.
great.
It'll be a good time.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so then you said you were going originally to be a mess specialist, and
Yeah.
then
Got into a little bit of trouble in boot camp. I was apparently, you may have heard of this, the dude with the tude. That was me. Apparently, I was also morbidly obese. I joined the Navy at like 215, which was apparently the max weight limit for my height. I'm like 5'8", maybe 10 on good days. And so they gave me something called the Green Monster you had to drink right before you weighed in, which, is definitely weight reducing is probably a good way to describe that.
is it
And
similar to what they give you before prostate exams
I think it probably
or
tastes
or
better.
uh, or uh,
Colonoscopies?
colonoscopies? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's very similar.
yeah,
It's a little bit more active, I'll be honest with you.
yeah.
I was not prepared for that moment.
So
Uh,
that would be a messy prostate exam. Never mind.
yeah, and so I wound up coming in, and I had to wear sweatpants most of boot camp because they're gonna give you clothes that fit, allegedly. And so I was the push-up petty officer, and every time someone had a problem, it was my problem because I got to do the PT for it, and that kind of wore thin on me. And me and a guy got into a little bit of a push-a match, nothing serious, into a little bit of a push-a match. And so, end of the day, it all worked out. I graduated when I was supposed to. I think I'm a better served to have been being a jet engine mechanic or a gas systems mechanic. Um, it just kind of spoke to me. I grew up as an electrical refrigeration contractor's kid, working on job sites, and tools make sense. So let's do that. And I got lucky. It wasn't too bad. I went to A school in Great Lakes, um, which uh, was pretty cool. I mean, at the end of the day, they had something called the Taste of the Chicago. I don't know if they still do it, but they have this huge like blues festival, and they have food around the same time. And you go downtown to Chicago, and if you're a sailor, for the most part, things were like free.
Yeah.
Or maybe I forgot to pay. I don't know. I just did sailor stuff.
Yeah, I remember that. You go out in town in your uniform back then, and it was yeah, good time. You're a rock star.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I remember I did my like I was non-rate, and then we did I did my school up there after boot camp, and it was like we were hit some clubs out like I think it's something was there's Club Medusa or something. I don't know if it still existed, but it was just like opened my eyes to a whole different alternative world, you know, and that it was like Creature Cantina from Star Wars or something walking in that
Oh,
place. It was something else. But I don't know. I don't know if that place still exists down there or what, but it was pretty good time in Chicago. And then I mean, you had sent me like your resume from your like when you retired and everything. And
yeah.
I know there was a time where you were part of Assault Craft Unit 5. I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm jumping too far ahead
Oh no.
in your timeline, but you know, that stuck out to me because I ended up being a part of Assault Craft Unit 2 here in Little Creek.
Yep.
And I know we did some like cross stuff with the West Coast. I think ACU 1 like up in Alaska and stuff like that. But what was your experience like with that unit?
Man, I was so mad, and this may speak to some of the sailors out there, or maybe some of the people that have gone through uniform changes. So I graduated A school, and I was set to go on a ship out of Hawaii. So sounded amazing. And this is going to come back later in my career. It was called the Benfold. The ship had just commissioned, and I was going to go to the ship, and I needed to go get good-looking dungarees. So when I graduated boot camp, we had the blue dungarees that I think everyone is pretty familiar with. But you wrote everything on with a stencil, or you ironed on like things like your crows, your petty officer insignias.
Yeah.
And so if you were really fancy, you would go get the fire retardant dungarees, and you would have them embroider U.S. Navy and your name on your dungarees. So I mean, that's what a squared away guy did.
Yeah.
And Pat Otis's opinion was, I want to be the most squared away, because when I got into a little trouble in boot camp, they introduced to the idea of that if I didn't complete my contract, that local law enforcement was really interested in talking to me and would love to spend some time with me. Now, back to the idea that I'm 5'8", I'm not exactly an impressive physical specimen. I don't want to be involved in any sort of local law enforcement discussions.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want to be the most squared away guy possible. So I went out and I got myself, the Craspin work boots. I got the coveralls, and I got everything embroidered. I spent a little bit of each one of my paychecks, like the fleeters told me to do, and I was stacked. So I had 4 pairs of dungarees, 2 pairs of coveralls. I was ready to go. So we get ready to go to Sato to go get our orders and our tickets, because everything was physical back then.
Yeah.
And I go there and they're like, "Hey, congratulations, because you did so well in class. You've been selected for this program called STAR." I was like, "Okay, well, you got to go talk to Chief and Senior Chief." So I go talk to Chief and Senior Chief, and Chief and Senior Chief explained to me that I get to go to this new ship called the Benfold, and I get to go there for stay in the Navy for 6 years instead of 4 like my original enlistment. I was like, "Oh, okay. What do I get out of this?" Like, no, you get to go to a ship, like a really new ship right away, and that's your thing. I was like, that's dumb. All the other dudes are getting advanced. I was like, I want to get advanced. Like, they're not going to advance you. I was like, well, I'm not going. Like, well, you don't want to go to a ship? I was like, no. Then like, you're not going to be a sailor in our Navy. You're going to the LCACs. I was like, what's an LCAC? They're like, exactly. Get the out of here. So they changed my tickets and my orders to go to Camp Pendleton, California, ACU 5. And ACU 5 is at the time was is completely different than the average Navy. It is a hovercraft which moves Marine Corps equipment to and from the beach at a high rate of speed. It's got 4 gas turbine engines, 2 small generators, and it looks nothing like anything that you've done in A school, to include getting an M16, to getting fatigue, camis, to learning how to rucksack march, to camping outside.
Yeah.
And I was so mad that I went there, initially. But ACU 5 was pretty amazing at the end of the day. I did a total of 6 years there, and it was awesome. I mean, I got to go see the world. I had probably the best duty section ever as a junior sailor. We had Watchstanders Liberty. Mind you, we bitched about it. Every 13 days, we had to do Watchstanders Liberty. Oh no. A 4-hour watch every 13 days, not in our dress uniforms, in our camis, and it was usually riding around in a pickup truck in the back 40 of the compound, making sure that nothing happened to the LCACs. So it was pretty much a rover watch in a pickup truck.
Nice.
So,
I remember, like, my time in ACU2 Cleveland, Assaultcraft unit. They quickly changed the names on drill weekends and ATs to alcohol consumption unit.
yes.
And so there was a lot of time we played hard, or we worked hard, but we also played hard, And like you were saying, I mean, for us, I was with the Mike 8 boat, so ours didn't go as fast, but we would haul equipment and troops over and drop the ramp and all that stuff. But when on the reserve side, it was kind of nice because we would we're taking the boats out for basic maintenance or whatever, get out of the reserve center, take the boats out, and then we'd be, we're going to do swim quals, drop the ramp and just basically have a little Steel Beach picnic on drill weekends and stuff. But then, when we did the ATs and we would do like the mock, like set up camps with the CBs and, all that fun stuff,
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny, until I joined the Navy, like I didn't really drink that much. I mean, I probably had like 1 or 2 beers my entire life. Really kind of my concept coming into it was, people underage that got busted drinking, they told on people all the time. So I was like, I'm not going to get told on, so I'm not going to do that. And the military, is definitely, I don't know if it was around, it wasn't around when I first came in, but they had this video called The First 72 Hours that I got to see later as a senior guy, teaching us about command sponsorship and making sure you take care of the person. The first time I got picked up by my command for ACU5, I was at the barracks, and the guy next to me comes out of the barracks room. He's like, "Hey, you like aftershock?" I was like, "I don't know what that is." He's like, "Oh, it's cinnamon flavored alcohol." I was like, "I mean, I'll try it." And so I take a swig of it. And he's like, "Oh, no, take a little bit more." He's like, we'll share this totally. And so it tastes like cinnamon Cinnaburst gum is probably the best way to describe it, which I still can't chew because of this day. 24 hours later, I wake up missing my dress blue top, my white hat, and my left shoe. And someone's screaming at me because I'm in a drainage ditch with like 4 other people at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday. Like, I don't know. I was like, what happened? And
No.
yeah, and so party hard, it was definitely one of our, I think, tenets.
Yeah, I remember like I had a similar experience in Italy when I first got exposed to Jägermeister.
Cool.
And I was halfway in. It was a nice setup, a nice marble floor, really nice bar or whatever, and bar restaurant. And I'm halfway in the men's room and halfway in the marble floor hallway in a pile of my own puke with some dude standing over me yelling at me in Italian. So
Yeah,
the smell of it to this day will still like turn my stomach.
for sure. I've been permanently scarred from cinnamon. So, I mean,
I noticed too that on your time you served in Okinawa.
yeah, I got a pretty cool opportunity. So initially, went from gas systems mechanic to master at arms, and I did well in the class. Another story of doing well in the class. I hope I don't dissuade anybody from doing any good in the Navy classes, because they allegedly award you, but it's only with the stuff they have available. So that needs to be said, I think. And they're like, "Hey, we've got all these great opportunities in San Diego." I was like, "Oh, great! I can stay in California. This will be great." And they're like, well, unfortunately, you did really well, and they need a top performer in Okinawa, Japan. And I was like, but I thought I got pick of the orders. Like, oh, you get pick of the orders that we offer you. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And they're like, we're offering you Okinawa, Japan. I was like, cool. What else is available? They're like, so about Okinawa. And I got to go to Okinawa, Japan. And this is like 2003-ish. And just to put into conception, or not into conception, into the discussion, is that it was less than 100 years ago that during World War II and the Pacific Theater push, we were firebombing this country, and people were coming up through White Beach, Okinawa, where I was stationed, and battling intensely. Families were holding hand in hand and jumping off cliffs in Katsuran to avoid the ravages of war. So just to put that into concept, I landed in Okinawa, Japan, and my sponsor basically showed up at the wrong airport. So you can show up at Kadena, or you can show up at the civilian airport. I flew into the civilian airport, and that's where they didn't show up. So I had to figure out how to get from there to Kadena, knowing zero Japanese, not understanding any of the symbology, and having a very, very basic concept of where I was going. So I'm, walking around basically begging people to help me. And they do. They, in fact, help me. Like, a person got me on a bus, paid for my ticket to go to Kadena, rode with me up to Kadena, and got me off the bus and walked me basically to the gate through Gate 2 Street, if you're familiar with the area. And then, helped communicate with the MLC, the master labor contractor, the Okinawan Guard, to contact the Air Force, so the Air Force could come get me and they could contact my command. So just to put that in concept, the people of the country were humble, considerate, and kind. And it was an amazing experience. I ran a marathon while I was there. I got to have tea with the Master of Tea Ceremony of Japan. I got to work in the local community at shelters, helping senior citizens. The healthcare system is a little bit different in Japan, but helping seniors have a normally structured life, get books, go get food, those type of things. So it was a pretty amazing experience in Japan, in Okinawa, and specifically. And if anyone has the opportunity to travel there, I can't recommend it enough. It is absolutely beautiful, and the people are warm, friendly, and kind.
Yeah, I've always kind of wanted to make a trip out there because, you mentioned about, the ravages of war there. My father was a part of that. He was a Marine in World War II, and he was on that island in that, and he didn't like talking a lot about it, until actually he started opening up after my last deployment before I retired from the Navy, a little bit before he passed. But yeah, it definitely sounded like hell on earth over there.
It did. It did, and there's a couple really good books that kind of talk to a little bit of each side of it. And it doesn't take much to search on the Pacific Theater and get some good literature to read. I think it just generally is good literature. I will give you this one note though, and this is travel advice. Now, Bill, I know you don't drink, but this is for anyone that else decides to go out there. Is there something called habu sake out there? To be clear, it has got a poisonous snake, and it is stuck inside of liquor, sake, and it's preserved inside there. It is a very exciting thing for locals and for visitors to give a try. My advice to you is that you just say, great, that's a great looking snake inside of a liquor container, because it tastes just like a bathroom at a hospital smells. So you don't need to have the experience. It's about the equivalent of drinking a Jack Daniels. Do one of those. Habusaki is not good.
Yeah,
Please don't go down this path.
yeah, have a Jack Daniels, less poisonous
Less snake. Yeah.
Yeah. And now another duty station I definitely wanted to ask you about was I'd seen that you did some time in GITMO.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You want to talk about that a little bit,
Yeah.
or whatever
So
you're allowed to say about it?
for sure. So I was part of a Navy Expeditionary Guard Battalion. We were part of the group that took over the Haitian detention facilities and then brought in what everyone knows now is Navy Expeditionary Guard Battalion, GITMO, where the detainees were held based on a couple principles at the time. This is in late 2003, and so you had to be directly connected to the act of terrorism on September 11th. You were responsible for training or aiding financially that act or people that were part of that group. And then finally, you could not be held due to your intelligence level at other facilities. So you were held there. And there's a whole lot of legal mumbo jumbo that's kind of associated with all this stuff. But at the end of the day, countries gave the United States people that they felt fit these standards, and then they wouldn't take them back. So, kind of like you're going through the store and you've picked up the free candy. Once you pick it up, you can't put it back, right? Like you're stuck with it. And until you can figure out how to deal with it, you're stuck with it. And so during that time frame, there was something called the commissions, and those were trials designed to provide some sort of legal status for the detainee and then find a way to off ramp them. Are they going to be held against crimes against the United States or other countries? If it's other countries, then we have to turn them over to other countries. So that was kind of the group of stuff that went on in Navy Expeditionary Guard Battalion. Now, the island of Cuba, the area that I was at, I can't, again, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you about the amazing diving out there. If you've never been diving, I think that area, Cuba, Jamaica, it's got to be amazing to see. I know Cuba was pretty beautiful. You got to do a lot of scuba diving.
Nice. Now that sounds kind of like, I don't know, like so you got to trust these other countries and their judicial system or lack thereof that said, these guys are bad and we're sending them to you, I mean, and then with the language barrier and stuff, it's like, you got to wonder like how many of them may have really been bad guys or just people that country didn't want to deal with,
For sure. So that comes into a lot of it, not to mention the, humane treatment, in following the basic human rights, Geneva Convention stuff. And you start looking at all those things, and that's pretty hard at the end of the day on people. And of course the people who experience it. So there's a lot of struggle there, with people coming in and out of that environment. We took over from the Army, and so there's a lot of policy differences between the Army and the Navy. Obviously, at the Joint Chiefs Staff, there's two different branches for two different reasons. And I think you go back to the idea of like secure the building. I'm sure you've all heard the joke of secure the building, right? For the Army, the Navy, and that really kind of comes down to a really good example of the idea. When you say secure the building for the Navy, they are talking about closing the door, locking it, and walking away. You say that to the Army, and they are talking about clearing and sweeping it and probably posting entrance and exit points and exfil areas with overwatches. So those type of transitions are challenging, and I would say I got the opportunity to experience that. Wasn't bad. Wasn't the worst place to be. I can imagine a lot worse places to be.
Gotcha. And then I wanted to ask you one more, and then I wanted to get into some of the other questions I asked veterans on here. There was I wanted to ask about like uh your, I mean, you know, coming in the way you came in, and doing your time, like adapting and obviously excelling, because not everybody makes it to the rank of Master Chief. That's like the high, for enlisted, that's as high as it gets. How did that when did things start changing for you? And then as you were in, where you were just like, I'm gonna take this Navy thing, I'm gonna own it, and I'm gonna be the best that I could be in there.
So great question. So I was on my first deployment with the LCACs, and I was coming back, and I had the option of basically re-enlisting or not re-enlisting and off ramping after 4 years. And so dating myself for sure, I sent letters home to to talk to my dad, who was an electrical refrigeration contractor. And I asked him, I was like, "Hey, I'm thinking about getting out of the Navy. Like, I don't know what to do next. I know I have some college opportunities. I can go to college. Um, what are the thoughts? What could I come back? Because my idea was I was going to come back to Vermont. What could I come back and do to Vermont where I could be productive and do all that stuff?" And his letter back to me at the end of the day was like, "Hey, don't come back to Vermont. Uh, your old habits are still here. You have to find new habits in a new life. It seems like you've already started down that path." And I'll be honest with you, that to me, I was like, man, I thought maybe he would like invite me to come work for him or something along those lines. I gotta figure out my stuff on my own. Like I got to adult. uh, and then my senior chief at the time, Brian Lanier, was like, "Hey, so what's the game plan after the Navy?" I was like, "I don't know." He's like, "What's the game plan in the Navy?" I was like, "I don't know." He's like, "Well, you're a second class petty officer. You made second class fairly quick." He's like, "You should maybe consider giving this a go." Uh, okay. I mean, like I didn't have any reason not to. Like I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. Um, the most exciting thing I had in my life was a 1986 and a half Nissan hardbody pickup truck that had been airbagged. Like, I mean, so I decided to stay, and then I decided that I wanted to make more money and kind of change my environment, and the only way to do that was to get serious, like study for the advancement exams, um, do the jobs that people may not want to do, or go to the locations that people didn't want to go to and do well there. And so that shift was what got me to, I would say, making first class. And then I had a guy by the name of Mike Haas, um, who started asking me questions and made me the LPO because I listened to the sailors and I asked them questions about what they saw we could do better and how I could help them. And he said, "Well, you can't train caring, but you can train all the other stuff. And all the other stuff you suck at. You are the worst admin person I've ever met in my life." So he's a real sweetheart of a person. And so, that type of influence set me on a path to, get opportunities, being placed in charge of, large departments and challenging positions is kind of the thing that we do in the Navy, or I would say in the military, for success. You're not really promoted on your ability to do what you're doing next, but what everyone thinks you can do next. And I was a guy that you're not going to outwork me. That's just not going to happen. I may be the dumbest guy in the room, and I may have to spend 16 to every one of your 1 hours to do something. I will go weeks without sleep trying to get better. And that's that's very much rewarded in the military, I think. So that's what
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
made me
And
successful in that initial position when I made chief, and then everything else is learning that your job is to develop the rank junior to you. And if you're focusing on trying to develop yourself for the next rank, you're doing it wrong and you
Yep.
won't get rewarded. And and if people could obtain that, I think as a first class or as a chief and really envision that development, it's challenging. I really do understand it's challenging. I think we would have a lot, not so much more success with people making rank because that comes down to numbers and opportunities, but I think we would have a stronger um, force of subject matter experts. We'd have a larger pool of people that were really good at their job, opposed to the 10 or 15 that you see at a command typically.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and one thing I've noticed too during my time, a lot of the people that you mentioned that, that senior chief having the talk with you, when you're a second class, like what's next. A lot of the guys that I've seen that have grown in the ranks that have become successful is because of some of the guys that are already above them that started feeding into them and mentoring them, so to speak, and kind of pointing them in the right direction. And that's what, they teach us. While they're helping us, they're also like showing us that when we get there, then that's our job to do for the people that come below us. I remember when I made first class, my LPO was just like, it's mission men me,
Hmm.
you come last, you take care, the mission gets done first, you take care of your people. And then, it's no longer about, like from second class to, from first class below, it's like, all right, how can I get advanced? But once you get in that leadership position, it's like, it becomes about your people.
That's for sure.
So like, how many of those influences did you have along the way that kind of like, I mean, it sounded like you had some positive ones and some negative ones, like how not to be like.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things, and I use this as an example, if if you went on a school trip, typically you don't remember much about that school trip unless something bad happens. I mean, there may be some highlights, but it becomes a lot more interesting to your mind when bad things happen. So I think people innately probably learn more from bad actions than they do good actions. Not always. I recognize people are different, but I see more often than not, someone is quicker to learn by seeing a bad action than not. And I had some bad actors in my career, but the reality of it is I had some people that made it very, very much a point to explain to me that they were not the best person, but they were here if I needed assistance. And I had
Mm.
to challenge that relationship to develop it. And I got really lucky in a couple of them, people that just gave me really, really solid advice. Um, and one of them was Mike Haas. As I got older, as I became a command master chief, I had a guy by the name of Todd Steele who has been long since retired, who gave me general, I would say, command advice. He had a couple of years, couple tours as a command master chief. Most of his time, though, was as a HTCM. So it was good advice, as in he had um, internal department experience on a nuclear carrier. So he had a lot of people, which was really good. And then I had influences, I would say, outside of the Navy that were pretty good, um, by reaching out, interacting with some coaches. Um, I started trying to interact with the Chargers coach to get a little bit of advice, and got a little couple tidbits of like how to talk to a large team, which made me really think about it. And then I got lucky with my dad, who gave me some really hard advice, and caused me to make some pretty drastic changes as I went. But the most important group of people that probably helped me make things happen, and it's going to sound a little unusual, but it was the junior sailors. The
Mm.
junior sailors that were bold enough and had enough confidence in themselves, and I thought may or may not had a connection with me, but willing to test, and came down and sat and told me something. And I would get blown away. I mean, all the time, blown away by some of the things they would say, not because they were offensive, but because they were unvarnished and they helped so much. Um, I had a really interesting conversation with a young junior officer who had been explaining to me how when she was on the bridge, she had discovered that there was a rating system amongst the um, people on the bridge of who was a better looking female officer than the others. And I mean, it sounds like, again, somewhat ha funny, but or somewhat natural. But then you start talking about it and how it created such um, a standoff group. And then more groups from there just continue to bridge off and become further and further apart. And that's not what you want when you have a warfighting team.
Yeah.
And I mean, that type of division on the surface um, is problematic for semio surveys and stuff like that. But it can become really granular really quick. Um, and the only way usually to fix those type of things is really to work it out through some sort of, I don't want to say trauma focused event, but some sort of intense environment to kind of remove those things and to have those type of discussions. And I don't think we want to put everyone through war to have that type of an effective team. So junior sailors at the end of the day were probably my biggest asset, and they probably taught me the most. Um, I remember one of them was explaining to me like the best thing I could possibly be is myself. Like being Pat Otis with the sailors is going to be the most honest thing I can do. Like I'm not up to speed on Instagram and Twitter and all the other stuff. Like it's just not where I'm at, and trying to get into that stuff that I really don't have an interest in is fake. And nobody is willing to have a relationship with someone that is fake or surface. They're only going to
Yeah.
have a surface relationship. And what do you really want from a leader? You want a leader that knows what's going on with you and is able to provide you with the push or pull or compliment or concern with what you need to be the most successful. That's what you want from a leader. And when you're fake, you can't do those things. So, that junior sailor's advice of like, hey man, you're just not hip. Like you don't understand what we're into. Just don't be into it. Just be you. Be into what you're into and be excited to talk to us about what we're into, not try to be into what we're into. And I was like, I really appreciate that. Now get your hands out of your pockets.
That's great. Yeah. Man, you said a lot there that I wanted to try and touch on, but the importance of those little handling those little issues that cause division, because it's like we can't be a fully functioning unit, especially in wartime, you know, when we have these cliques, when we have these divisions. And it's almost like, I mean, example of where we're at as a country right now, there's div- so much that's being put out there to divide us instead of like what brings us together as Americans. And you talk about, we don't really want trauma based stuff or war to unite us again. But I remember, September 12th in 2001, after we got attacked, everybody was proud to be an American. It seemed,
Mhm.
never forget. And it's like, a lot of people seem to have forgot and then some,
Exactly.
but I also like that you talked to the what was it, the Rams football coach,
Chargers.
Chargers, and to get some advice, because I mean, you know, I I retired at first class, so it's like, I mean, the only I maybe, you know, ran a shop or a boat crew on an LCMA at certain times, so I didn't have the opportunity to get up there and have to lead over bigger groups. I had just small group of individuals that I got to invest in and know. And like you said, they taught me as well. But I could see how that would be great advice when you're running a whole command to kind of go uh, pick the brain of a head coach of a football team,
Mhm.
And like what did you learn from him that helped with being a command master chief?
So, interestingly enough, his discussion to me was he has a lot of assistants. Um, and that's what he's there for. He's there to help the assistants achieve their goals. I mean, don't get me wrong. At the time, Ryan Leaf. So we got to think about how long ago this was. Ryan Leaf, right, quarterback. He's not giving him direct. He's giving him like wave top discussion, but his quarterback coach is giving Ryan Leaf the intensive information that he needs to make the adjustment. And so his discussion in very short terms was, I believe that I can only run 6 people. I can only be in charge of 6 people.
Yeah.
So he set himself up in the sense of he was interactive, very direct with 6 people. And then those people, they had 6 people that they were very directly interactive with. Now, to say that he didn't have any idea who was on the team is ridiculous. But the idea is that he was able to focus his energy on 6 people and be very productive with it. And he had to get people to adapt to that to be the most successful with the time they have. Because realistically, that's what we all have, right? It's not him that said it, but at the end of the day, you can't outwork that idea of time. The time is forever, right? And it's always taking away from you. So you have to make the most efficiency or the maximum amount of benefit from your time. And that's why I think in his discussion, he used 6 people because he knew he could be concentrated for whatever 6 people's worth of time was to him to be the most effective. So I tried to kind of keep that philosophy through my time in a command position, was to focus on, the 6 departments. Sometimes it was 5, sometimes it was 6, sometimes it was a little bit more. And then unfortunately I'd have to short stroke some time with those people to give them what I thought was the best I could give them. But
yeah, I remember, always being thrown around, delegate,
mhm.
and that I'm glad you mentioned that, because one thing we say in recovery too is like, how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. We get caught up, like I noticed that where the morale was bad during my time in was when there was micromanagers, that had to be, every detail of everything, almost like, just it wasn't fun. But when you had good leadership that would delegate, and they could stay kind of like in a cool mindset, because they knew that their team under them would handle things. And if anything ever had to like reach you, then it had to be something that was serious that had to be dealt with, obviously. But most of the time there's probably so much things that never reached you that you weren't aware of, that were handled and nipped in the bud right away, because you had your team and they knew how to handle their teams. And
yeah, I think that environment of trust, and really what I see and what I hear when I hear people say there was a lot of micromanagement, I mean, there's obviously 2 sides to everything at the end of the day, but there has to be a lack of trust or a lack of understanding or lack of communication. So usually I boil it down to communication. I have found in my experience, most people want to be successful. Like most people don't like sucking. Like they don't, you know what I mean?
yeah,
And now their sucking may be a result of a lot of bad decisions, you know what I mean? They still don't want to continue to suck. Like
oh
they
yeah,
want improvement. And most people are asking for that. And then in the case of micromanagement, usually what I find is that people either don't understand how to achieve the goals, or they don't understand what the goals are, or they don't align with the goals, or there's just some sort of a issue in that manner. And it takes some understanding. And the unfortunate part of that is that many people don't invest in developing themselves outside of the most basic leadership training that we get. So what happens is you identify with the leadership style, or you see someone that's got a successful leadership style, I think as a junior person, and then you're like, that's it. That's the one I'm going to use. I'm going to be the screaming knife hand guy, or I'm going to be the it's okay, come into Chief's office, Chief will do all your work for you guy, or we're just going to try to not take any task on guy. You know what I mean? Like, so they don't really work on a process to become better at how to express their leadership shortcomings or needs. And so when they start micromanaging, the junior, in the case that's getting micromanaged, usually doesn't have a way to reflect back to that leader, I need these things so you don't micromanage me. And I don't want you to micromanage me. I want to accomplish your goals so you can go on and do other stuff. And I think that takes a lot of trust. It takes a lot of time together. And I don't think all those things happen very often in the Navy. I think it just becomes a big challenge. And I'm hoping to see that we get better at it. But I don't think it's going to be perfect.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, that was I remember when we definitely got to get to the other reasons why we were connected here. But I remember, talking with when I got a chance to meet Danny Wimmer at incarceration and talking with him briefly and mentioning meeting you and saying, man, telling him like, you guys got to realize what you have here, because this is not everybody makes Master Chief or Command Master Chief. So you got upper management here, leadership, and I see you doing well. So I was trying to put in some good words for you when I was talking with them. But real quick, before we get to that, I want to ask you a couple of questions I normally ask veterans on here. Some of the oddest things that you witnessed or experienced while serving. And I'm sure with your career, there's plenty.
Yeah. So I think the oddest thing that I have witnessed was my first duty station at Camp Pendleton, California. And if you've ever seen the wildest police chases videos, I don't know if those are still popular. They have the one where there's a tank that is out driving on the freeway, right? That tank is from Camp Pendleton, California, and a reservist hopped into the tank at an unguarded, area and took the tank out the back gate of Camp Pendleton, California. So that happened about 2 years, I think it was, before I got to Camp Pendleton, and they had created something called the 21 Area Guard, which was a full-time patrol and basically stood watch on something. So we would go TAD to 21 Area Guard for 6 months on a 6-month rotation if you were E4 and junior. Each person would do probably about 1 or 2 tours with them, so about a total of a year for your 4-year tour if you stayed E4 and junior. And so I got to go over there and do a tour, and we were up for 48 hours on post. And the weirdest thing I've ever seen anyone do was hand me a bottle of hot sauce and say, just put 1 drop in your eye. It's how we stay awake out here. So that was probably the oddest thing that I've seen for sure. And wow. Then that was super odd. So I never thought I'd be in a point where I'm taking a daub of hot sauce and basically putting it in my eye to stay awake.
So I mean, you were you like, hey, you show me how to do it first?
Oh, for sure.
Okay,
for sure.
I was gonna say it because I remember the tricks they would play on the junior guys when you first
for sure.
come in, But that seems pretty harsh.
Yeah, I was like, I'll just go ahead. You go first, and like in the next couple hours, if I'm tired, I'll go. He's like, oh, okay. Yeah, it's like, there's no way I'm doing this. Zero chances.
Wow. So. And then out of all the places that you were in, I know I didn't get to go over all of them, but what would you say was your worst place that you served?
Worst place. So I think each place that I've been to has had a very, 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 very hard moment. And I think, unfortunately, that's probably the thing that I key on. And I think probably the hardest place that I've been to, and it was some of the challenges that were presented to me, would be probably Expeditionary Guard Battalion, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. They're very, very hard hours, very physically and mentally demanding. And I think realistically, at the end of the day, it was probably most challenging part of my job was that just trying to get back to normal so I can go back to work the next day. And that sucked.
Yeah, gotcha. And then what was one of the best places?
Oh, that's super easy. So I wound up becoming the command master chief of the USS Benfold, which was the ship that I was supposed to go on when I
Yeah.
became a GSM. And when that opportunity arose, I was on it. And so we transferred the ship, it's called the home port shift, from California to Yokosuka, Japan. So it went from San Diego to Yokosuka, Japan, which was awesome. The reason that it was the most favorite thing ever was I don't know if I'm sure you have been out in the middle of the ocean at night with all the lights off the ship off, and you get to watch the sky and the moon above you.
And
It
you can see
is
satellites.
it's
Remember?
it's amazing.
Yeah.
And there's also a phenomenon, and it's with algae, and the algae becomes phosphorus, so it glows. So it glows. In this case, it glows blue. So we are breaking water as we're going from San Diego to Japan, and this phosphorus is glowing, and it literally looks like the waves have got LEDs in them as they're coming off the ship, and it's amazing. So super super amazing experience, and it's something I think will be burned in my mind forever.
Nice. And I like how and you did mention that at the beginning, how everything came full circle, that was supposed to be what your originally your first orders.
Yeah,
And then then you came back, you're like, okay, I'll take those orders, but only when I'm when I'm running it, huh?
yeah. Apparently, super lucky, super lucky.
Nice. And what is one of your pet peeves for civilians since transitioning out of the military?
Um, well, I think one of my pet peeves is the idea that I have some sort of direct connection to whichever political affiliation they want to talk to me about. Like, oh, you're in the military, and like it seems like they jump right into some sort of political alignment discussion or anything along those lines. And at the end of the day, I didn't show up to work because of a political alignment. My goal was to show up to work, one, to provide for my family, and then to protect my family that I am serving with. And it cheapens the sacrifices that the people have made for me and I've made for them when it feels like I'm doing it for some sort of other ulterior motive. Um, I don't think people mean harm by it. I just don't think they understand the action of those words. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, completely. It's like I've experienced quite a bit of that myself. And or just, I mean, if you have all your limbs, but you experience some trauma in the military, and they wonder like, "Oh, how are you disabled?" or whatever,
Sure.
It's like people make a lot of assumptions, but going back to what you said, it's like I didn't, raise my right hand and take the oath to, you know, support and defend our Constitution for just, this group of people. These
Mhm.
other ones you can have, No, it was for
Yeah.
all Americans, you
Right.
know. And that's, I still take that oath serious, and I've been, retired a number of years now, you know.
Mhm.
Um and speaking of stuff that we carry, what is something that you will always carry with you from your time of service?
I think the real understanding of sacrifice, whether it could be someone for very real being broken, um, physically or mentally, or however you want to say that, to move the mission forward. And it doesn't have to be a sacrifice as a father, but the sacrifices that each person is making, and to hold the idea that there is another perspective is the thing that I'm going to take with me from my experiences in the military. Is just because I have this experience and this is my perspective on it doesn't mean it's the only experience. It's the only perspective. So my time in service has taught me that perspective. Really, what that word means.
Great. Yeah, I like that. And then what's one of the funniest stories you feel you can share from your time in service?
The funniest times I can share from my time in service. Well, um, so for all those, soft intel guys, um, I don't watch a whole lot of TV. It's just I don't know if I don't have the attention span for it or I don't have the time for it. Whatever it works out is I don't do a lot of it. So we were moored up in San Diego on the USS Benfold, a DDG, and next to us was a ship that was being used as part of a show called The Last Ship.
Oh yeah, I
Uh,
watched that. That was good.
yeah, well, I've never watched the show. And so at the time, because we were transiting to Japan, I lived on the ship, as did a good majority of the crew members. We were in the final processes of departing. And so they told us next door that there was a movie production company working on with the Navy Yard doing It's Your Ship or The Last Ship or something, 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 and that we would see, you know, unusual activity on the pier, but the watches would make sure that we were safe and we didn't go up when we were supposed to, blah, blah, blah. And I'll be honest with you, I was like, okay, got it, whatever. We're doing damage control drills today. That's what I'm worried about, blah, 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 blah. So we go through damage control drills and we get done with it. And it's probably like 18, 1900. And I'm walking off the ship with the XO at the time. And there's this guy walking down the pier with a couple other guys, and he doesn't have his cover on. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, this guy doesn't have his cover on, man. And as I'm getting closer, he it's a command master chief. I'm like, what is going on? And like the guys behind him, their uniforms are not quite right. Like they just like they don't quite make sense. And before this XO can say anything, like I zig over to talk to the command master chief. I was like, hey, what's up, brother? And the guy kind of looks at me. He's like, what? I was like, hey, brother. I was like, hey, man. I was like, I know you don't have your cover on. I was like, but your guys behind you, you've got some kind of like fucked up looking uniforms. We have an inspection team over here, and I don't want him to come over your ship and light your ass up. So, like, can I help you at all? And he's just looking at me. He's like, looking at me like I was crazy. I'm like, I was like, man, I'm like, I'm getting closer. I'm like, I'm trying to help you out right now. And he's like, are you serious? I was like, yeah, man. Like, we've got forces, inspection team over here doing damage control drills. You're gonna get into some trouble, bro. Like, you need to get your shit together. And he's like, well, I was like, all right, bro. I was like, I'm trying. I'm really, really trying. I'm like, fine. You don't want fucking help? And I walk off, and the XO's like, he's laughing. I was like, I'm sorry. I was kind of embarrassed because I should have had better control of my emotions. I was like, I'm sorry. Like, he's like, you realize you just yelled at an actor, right? I was like, no, an actor? What are you talking about? He's like, your last ship, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, the movie production thing. He's like, that's the actor. I was like, they have him dressed up as a command master chief. He's like, have you not seen the show? I was like, I don't fucking. So the next day, I'm on, we just finished damage control drills and I can't remember what we were doing. We were doing something near the quarterdeck and they call away or they ring on a captain on the ship. And basically the rule is, is that like someone rings a captain, like an 06 on board an 05 ship, the CO needs to be there now. And that shouldn't be unannounced. So myself and the captain and the XO kind of look at each other like, what's going on? And we all basically beeline for the quarterdeck. Well, it's the captain, who I think is a captain, who's apparently the actor on It's Your Last Ship, or Last Ship, whatever the show is called. I think his nickname is like Big Steamy or something like that. And so they ring him on board, announce him, and my commanding officer is super happy to see him. My XO is super happy to see him. The command master chief's there; they're all super happy. I'm like, I thought that you said this guy was an actor. She's like, yeah, he's an actor too. I fucking lost my mind. I was like, I can't do this. I'm so mad. So they have these photos of me sitting there, and the entire time I am just mother effing this guy with my eyes. I'm just like shake his hand. I'm like, so
Oh man, that's great. Yeah,
yes,
it's funny too. Now you kind of just ruined it for me a little bit because I actually watched that. I gave that show a shot, and I ended up enjoying it. Like there was a lot of the traditions in there, especially when they lost a few guys in battle and stuff, and it was like I was like, man, this is like so spot on. But I guess I didn't notice the the any of the issues with the uniforms and stuff, as much. But
yeah, they're
they-
small, and they actually had a lot of sailors as actors in there as extras. Our
yeah,
operations officer was a corpsman for a whole bunch of episodes, and they did a really good job. I mean, the reality of it is like I said in the beginning, is that I don't watch a lot of TV, and I was just not focused on anything outside of we're going to do damage control drills. We're going to be really good at these damage control drills. So we got to do this. And I just ignored the rest of it. They talked about it endlessly. They had it playing on the TV. I didn't watch any of the stuff. I ignored it.
yeah, and then like I mean, everything I thought was pretty spot on, except for the fact every time there was some like dangerous mission, like the CO and XO were like going in together, like they're
Yeah,
part of like some attack force team, and like that would never happen. We don't send our senior leadership all together in
for
harm's
sure.
way, but it was a pretty interesting show, but that's pretty funny. I can imagine um you know, what those guys were going through and how much they were laughing and joking about it at lunch that
Oh, I'm
day
sure.
after you tore into them.
Sure. I'm sure.
And then what is what would you say is one of your greatest hopes for our country that you were willing to give your life for?
So the thing that I am most honored to do is to die in battle, and not to strike into Odinism or a religious discussion by any means, but the idea that I have been challenged to go forward and protect for a real thing, a real purpose, a real process, is the thing that I had signed up for. And I hope at the end of the day that every person has their ability to communicate their needs in an environment that will at least hear their needs. They don't have to act on them, but can at least hear them. And that's what I consider being free. That you have an environment to express that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we can't grow together and learn from each other if somebody's saying something we don't agree with and we automatically just silence them. There's no communication, there's no conversation. We have to be
Mhm.
willing to listen, and like you said, we don't have to agree, but we got to come to the table and maybe learn that, find what our common ground is, and we can't without communication, you know.
Agree. I agree 100%.
And what do you feel we can do to break the stigma of mental health and PTSD?
So I think talking about it is probably one of the best things we can do. Pat Otis's opinion, not to be confused with the Department of Defense or the Department of the Navy's uh, policies, is very much that. And one of the things I work towards discussing with people is mental health and learning how to identify needs of a mental health and not just shoving it off. So right now, um, mental health is a big discussion amongst all mental health providers, both civilian, inside the Navy or inside the military, inside the DoD enterprise, outside. And there's many foundations that are here to help and are willing to help and just learning how to connect with them. So inside the Navy, of course, you have Fleet and Family Support, which has uh, counselors on staff to assist. They don't have all the counselors they need because it's very difficult to get people into those positions. It's a challenge. There's a shortage. And then after that, you have traumatic type, trauma focused therapy, and the emergency rooms that are major hospitals or military hospitals, and they're short staffed too. And then post that, you have counselors available for maybe not trauma and maybe not immediate, but just continuing of better health, mental health, and fitness. And the TRICARE system, our military healthcare system, is overwhelmed. Outside of that, you start going to programs called Military One Source, which try to offer relief for 12 sessions, outside of the TRICARE system, outside of the hospital, military hospital care. And they're also overwhelmed. So you started to hear quite a bit of a discussion. So what do I think needs to happen is, I think at the end of the day, there's two things that need to happen. We need to continue to look for these resources. And two, we need to continue to be kind. It's going to sound weird from a person that, yelled at some guy for not having his uniforms right. But I think being kind and listening as a leader inside the military is one of the things that we need to do. And we need to focus on it very, very, very hard. I didn't understand or realize how big the mental health need was inside the military, probably until I was a command master chief, until I started learning more about these programs and symptoms and things that people need outside of their everyday thing. And the idea that, Petty Officer Jones, well, he's late to work today, his alarm clock didn't go off, get another alarm clock, there may be more to that. There may be more of a discussion that we need to have because of that. Yeah. And again, that goes back to, that takes time, that takes the investment as a leader and people learning how to do that. You have to teach people how to do those things. And it starts with, I think, every command master chief, every master chief, every sailor sitting down and asking themselves, are they really taking the opportunity to ask someone how they're doing, or are they just having a response? Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. And I mean, I've experienced some of the the overwhelmed system. I was seeing I've hired and fired many therapists at the VA till you find the right fit, or when you do find the right fit and you start finally opening up and feeling comfortable, they leave,
For sure.
and or they get burnt out, and it's like, we got to do more to take care of the people taking care of our people, as well.
For sure.
One thing that has been part of my journey that's helped me tremendously with my anxiety. Like, I mean, I had like really, I mean, when I don't know, I'm diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety, and I think that was a lot of reason why I leaned on my crutch of alcohol and drug use back in the day. But being able to, I enjoy live music, and being able to go to shows and those crowds and those festivals could get overwhelming. When I got sober, it's like I didn't have any my crutches to lean on. So it's like you're trying to enjoy the show, but then you need to disappear off into some space or whatever. But I know one thing that's been helping me to be able to communicate better with people and get out there more is doing this. This is a form of therapy for me. This is something that a lot of people, oh yeah, think I'm trying to be Joe Rogan or something. The paycheck would be nice, but this is just something that I'm it's helping me when I have these discussions, but I also trying to put it out there so it has opportunity to help others. And that's why I like to ask some of the questions I ask and get into the things that I get into. But speaking of the music festival life, and all right, Danny Hayes, if you've been watching, I hope you I appreciate your patience. But let's talk about what you're doing now. And you know, I think you mentioned it was through the DoD, the Skillbridge program. You want to share a little bit about
Yeah,
that?
I'd love to talk about that. And I just want to tag in your discussion about mental health, a program that I'm participating in. And if you have had any trauma-based um, uh, incidents while you're in the military, something that is free, it's called Headstrong, and it's headstrong.org. You can go on there. It's a free program. It's another resource. Please go check it out. I'll shoot you, Bill, the link. I don't know if you put notes in the YouTubes afterwards. Maybe we can list it there for you.
Okay.
But what am I doing now? So the Department of Defense has a program called Military Skillbridge. It's been around since 2014. And what it is you are TAD, or you are temporary assigned duty. I'm not sure other branches say that word, but that's what you are, temporary assigned duty for 180 days away from your command. The last 180 days that you're in the military, either retiring or separating, to a Skillbridge approved or DoD approved organization slash employer, with the hopes that they're going to train you in skills, or take the skills that you have and use those to move you forward into a position with inside that company's walls, is the one way to say it. So how did I become part of Danny Wimmer Presents? Was our question, I think, when we met at incarceration.
Incarceration. Yeah.
That's right, incarceration. Um, Phenomenal festival, by the way, Mansfield, Ohio, at the Shawshank Redemption Prison. Absolutely wonderful experience. We had about 25,000 people there, just for your awareness. And I am there with you, with the anxiety, with all those people there.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people. Great festival, great event, great all the way around. So I was pursuing LinkedIn.com on my year of free premium because I'm retiring slash separating. Again, something you can check out through LinkedIn, or go into your transition assistance program through your local Fleet Family Support Center, or My Navy Center, or the Air Force Center. The Skillbridge opportunity to come up and go to Skillbridge with Danny Wimmer Presents popped up, and it was a job description that talked to me about being a event operations manager, is the best way to describe it. So I'd be responsible for interacting with vendors and interacting with staff and labor, and troubleshooting and solving problems and negotiating contracts. And basically, when I read the job description, it said you're going to be pulling a ship into port, and you're going to be negotiating everything you need to do and set everything up and run the divisions that are responsible for these things. And then you're going to get back on that ship and you're going to depart in 4 days. And I was like, sold. Sounds like a great opportunity. So I submitted my resume to Danny Wimmer Presents, and I got to speak to Danny Hayes, and we had a great conversation. I got the opportunity to meet all the department heads for Danny Wimmer Presents, and about the third conversation in, I won't mention who said it at Danny Wimmer Presents, but I thought it was great. And I asked this question. I said, "Hey, why do you do what you do?" And it was a question designed to kind of see where their head was at. And they said, "Well, at the end of the day, I like providing an escape." I was like, "Wow, say that again." Like, I want the person that comes to our experience and that comes to our festival to be able to be, this is what they're focused on. This is it. We're not worried about whether or not the cat's sick, or whether or not they've got dinner ready on time, or if Jill is going to make the honor roll, or if their fashion's appropriate for the event. I want them to be excited and planned to escape into this event for the next 3 days, and this is what they're thinking about, nothing else. Because when I want to relax and recharge, that's what I do. I want to escape and I want to go enjoy myself. And that's what I want. I was like, I'll buy that for all day. Yeah, and that's a passionate statement. And they have a group of about 40 professionals at Danny Wimmer Presents and the office itself that have almost identical statements. And there is an ethos for sure, but that's not the discussion. They all have some perspective of that, and that to me is attractive. And I want to be part of a team that wants and is that passionate about that discussion. Um, and I think if you saw, Sunday's events uh, of that festival, I was out there shoveling mulch to make sure that people were safe in front of the front stage. And Danny Wimmer and Danny Hayes and the other department heads were standing right next to me with buckets of mulch, making sure mulch was laid down so people were not getting injured and that we were able to listen to Lamb of God. We're on the ADA stage, dewatering the ADA stage in rain that I've probably only seen once or twice in my life. We're out there making sure that people are safe and having an experience of their lifetime because they paid for it, and we want to give them every ounce of that dollar, every ounce of it. And I, to be honest with you, I'm 100% hooked after that experience.
Yeah, I've been coming to some of his festivals for a number of years now. I'm here in Ohio, and they've had Rock on the Range in Columbus, which ended up becoming Sonic Temple. And I would just see a little bit of behind the scenes, but what I always loved and respected is like Rock on the Range would usually be on Armed Forces Day weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And he always included, I know they always offer like discounted tickets for military. They always, have something special. Like I was there when Nita Strauss from Alice Cooper played, the Star Spangled Banner on guitar, and they had a dressed Marines up there with the flag. And, talk about an escape. The first music festival back after being locked down because of COVID was Incarceration last year. And it was on the 20th anniversary of 9/11 at Mansfield there. And it was like going to a retreat, man. It was like it was amazing. And they did, they honored the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And no matter what, I'll just say this, no matter what some of the things get pushed out on the news or TV and all this fear and division and this, that, and the other, when they came, I mean, and here's all these caged animals finally getting out, let loose, bunch of metalheads at a show, everybody's raging, having a good time. But then when the announcement came, let's have a moment of silence for those we lost on September 11th, you could hear a pin drop. Those thousands of people stopped doing what they were doing, stood up, paid attention. And then when the girl came out and sang the national anthem, man, hands on the hearts, hats coming off. I had tears running down my eyes because it was just like, man, if I believe everything I watched on the news, this, our country's lost, man. But to see everybody there, it was amazing. And Danny Wimmer makes sure that those things are included. He's, I've respected that about his organization and his events so much, as a veteran, that I feel that escape. I feel that they, a lot of people that don't know, and they, they'll find everything to bitch about. But when I had the opportunity, like I said, I got to talk to Danny Hayes and shake his hand, and he connected us. And then I saw Danny Wimmer. I went and I told him, I said, man, I told him how much I appreciate, what he does there. And I've heard that even, I remember there was issues with like the buses last year, and Danny Wimmer was out there helping direct traffic, and, he's hands on, and that's the, leadership that we get behind,
For sure. And the thing that I think is probably the most impressive is that it is echoing. It's not just one person, right? It's an entire group of people that are dedicated like that. It's not, hey, go join me. It's, oh, okay, well, there's something, let's go take care of it. You know what I mean? I think at that concert, for example, I was there, filling up hand pump stations with a hose water. It was just something that was needed to happen. So we did it. And on the other side, I've got, two other guys that are doing the exact same thing. That's not our jobs. And we're there doing other things. But at the end of the day, we're sitting there like, oh no, like we want the fans to have the best experience possible. And Dirty Hands, not part of it, So no one is directing us. It's so I, at the end of the day, am very lucky and very excited that I have an opportunity to seek out, a program like that. And to note, Danny Wimmer Presents is going to be bringing on more Skillbridge opportunities available. So you can reach me for sure to talk about those things, and I'll give you my email, Bill, so you can post it up, and we can work through that. But it's an incredible experience. I think having this program, having command support this program, at the end of the day, are going to make the big difference. From my perspective, being a command master chief, going to not being a command master chief is challenging. But having a company, no one walks around calling me command master chief. Thank everything holy for that. But I get called Pat, and I get to go, interact with the company and understand how a company looks at things and how a civilian group looks at things, and it's a great experience, and I can't recommend it enough. It's absolutely wonderful, and Danny Wimmer Presents is a perfect place for me to land, and I'm super lucky that I got it.
Oh yeah, and I remember when we were introduced too. It just it just fired back up. I was like, yeah, Master Chief, yes, Master Chief. Great to meet you. You're like, call me Pat. I'm like, all right. Old habits, but
I get you.
It was I'm grateful for I've had even outside, and you talked about bad habits earlier, and I picked up quite a bit of them, and I got no one I can point fingers at other than myself of maybe where I could have been in my Navy career that I didn't reach because I chose to chase addictions or whatnot, but no matter what my journey has taken me, I've still had this opportunity to be able to be where I was at that festival, to get introduced to you. And I'm just extremely grateful. Everybody there is just always so hospitable. I'm so happy for my buddy Dan Jansen, who's a partner with Incarceration. He's somebody that I came up with here in Cleveland. I was a concert promoter for a number of years back in the day, and me and Dan started around the same time. And like I said, I kind of went into my bad habits, and he stayed focused, and now he's partnered with Danny Wimmer at the festival. But you know what, I still get to be there and have a good time now with 13 years of sobriety, and I didn't burn too many bridges. So
No, yeah,
I'm grateful for the journey, and man, if there's anything I can ever do for that organization, I appreciate them, and I'm on top of it. So when Danny Hayes said, "Hey, I got a guy for you," I was excited, and the more I've gotten to know you, it's made it even better. I know I got a shipmate and friend out there in California, or and hopefully you'll be a part of that team, and I'll see you at the festivals going forward.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we have a couple festivals coming up, both in Louisville, Kentucky. We have Bourbon and Beyond, which is going to be a 4-day festival in September, and then Louder in Life. And if I was choosing between the two, which I get the question now all the time, is how do you choose which festivals to go to? I don't. I get to go to both of them. But Louder in Life is going to be pretty awesome. It's going to be the 22nd through the 25th in Louisville, Kentucky, at the KEC Center, and it is going to be awesome. If you're a camping guy and you've got an RV, I tell you what, I think that's the way I would attack it.
Oh, yeah,
for sure. I mean, something to check out. So go check out the camping stuff they have on the website. Both those websites are real basic, Bourbon and Beyond Festival.com, and then louderthanlifefestival.com, and you can go check them out. But great lineups, really going to be good. So
Yeah, I've been wanting to do the Louder in Life for a number of years now, and I think it's just you know, like I was sharing with you my when we were talking at the festival, my youngest just graduated high school, so now it's like, you know, I've been a single dad for a number of years, but now I think I got the freedom to start making some of these, and RV is something I definitely want to invest in so I can make the trips, because that's been the problem too. Is just like, okay, I can go down there, but then where do I stay? You know,
yeah,
and the hotels and everything around there sell out pretty quick. So if you don't know anybody, or you're not bringing your own home on wheels or whatever for the camping, uh, you're out of luck. But I hope to get there at some point. You
I hear
know.
you. I hear you. It's going to be a great event. I'm very excited about it. It'll be great to see Kentucky. I'm excited to see how all the hard work that we've been putting in over the last year is going to develop. I mean, we have a pretty phenomenal team. Not patting ourselves on the back, but we got a good team, and it's going to be great for sure.
Nice. Yeah. So great team. I'm kind of envious. You know, I wish I would have known about like a Skillbridge program, but when I was getting out, I mean, when I retired, I was coming out from the reserve side though, so probably don't know if those opportunities were there. But if there was ever, like, if I ever had to get a job again, you know, I'd want it to be in an environment like you're at with those guys. So
Yeah, for sure. It's very supportive, good environment, hardworking. Tell you what, yesterday I was there at least 14 hours, and then transit time to and from home. But uh, hard work, a lot of hard work, a lot of Excel, but all worth it because I can see the things that were coming together. I'm excited to see how Louder's, you know, um, how the setup is going to impact the fan. Like you're going to get more viewing surface. You're going to have a larger stage. You're going to have more angles that you can like all these things that go into how a stage is laid out. Just it's mind blowing. It's really cool.
yeah, and you know, like what they say though, if you love what you're doing, it ain't work. You know,
Yeah, for
so
sure, for sure.
um, and it sounded like, you know, you definitely loved your time in the Navy as well. So
I did. It was a wonderful experience. Like I said before, some of the hardest times are probably the most memorable because they're the most challenging, and some of the easy times I've probably forgotten. But all in all, it's an amazing experience. I'm blessed that I was entrusted to do the job.
yeah. I wish I would have got an opportunity to serve with you, but maybe you know, in some other capacity, we'll
Sure,
keep in touch. Before we get ready and wrap up, I want to ask you some of the questions that I normally ask the guests that I have on, since we
sure.
got into the music part of things. Who are
Mhm.
your top three musical artists?
So top three musical artists, and I would say at the end of the day, I'm still a ginormous Grateful Dead fan. Um, so Grateful Dead has to be in there. I've become quite a bit of a stoner doom metal guy, and I consistently find myself going back to a band called Kyrus, which is pretty good. But they're tied with another band called All Them Witches, and then finally, um, soft reveal. I love Judas Priest. Love Rob Halford. I'm a huge Fight fan. Uh, Rob Halford by himself. His double live album was phenomenal. And of course, all the Judas Priest albums. So those top three are where I'm at.
Nice. And then, is there a particular song that you feel has been an inspiration in life that's like a go-to in your playlist that never gets old, and always something that, you know, if you're going through a rough time or whatever, you could throw on and kind of picks you up?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it's a pickup song, but it's definitely uh, a song that causes me to reflect. And I think I talked a little bit about earlier is I like to do like 45-minute to hour walks. And the reason I walk is I can't run anymore. I used to be a big endurance runner. So it is a Grateful Dead song. and it's Uncle John. And so the interesting part about it is off Working Man's Dead. It was the first time the Grateful Dead got the opportunity to they did play with their music a lot, but got to play a lot with the recording part of it. So it's a really interesting song because it's Garcia saying the intro and it's been redubbed, like relayered itself like 36 times. So it sounds like angels singing, when in fact it's kind of a chubby guy with a beard singing. So I like it.
Nice. And what's the last book you read?
I just finished a book called um, what is it? It is about communication, and it is introverts and how they communicate. A friend of mine is a really big introvert and gave it to me because I'm more of an extrovert. And learning more about how introverts communicate and how they struggle with communication uh, has helped me quite a bit. So,
Nice. And then you mentioned, I think you touched a little bit on it, your morning ritual and routine to have your best day possible. How do you like to start?
so my best day possible is started probably the night before by going to bed like I'm supposed to. I struggle with a lot of sleep issues, and so making sure that I follow my rule of going to sleep is tough. I do it. So starting there, in the morning, I get up, turn off my alarm, make my wife coffee, brush my teeth. And I grab a bottle of water or 12-ounce bottle of water, slam that, and I'm either headed to go work out in the gym in my garage or I go for a walk for about an hour. So the biggest thing I've discovered is by avoiding any media, like
Mm,
little computers you have in your hands or whatever. Um, Music I can do pretty easy because I can just turn on Spotify and go for it. But like looking at like Instagram, Word documents, Outlook, all that stuff just kind of takes me off track, and then I don't accomplish my goals.
mm.
So I get that done and back to the house, get my ladies ready for school or camp, whichever one they're going to, and off we go. That's my day, man.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I have to be more cognizant of that too. It's like I try and like before I get out of bed, I try and like being in recovery and trying to keep my connection with my higher power and stuff. I always try and read some devotionals when
Hmm.
I get up in the morning. And it makes it easy when there's an app on your phone to read these devotionals, but I'm picking up the phone and I got to make sure I'm going directly to those apps that I'm intending to
Hmm.
feed my brain with, because sometimes I get caught up in the other, and then like you said, then all of a sudden, my day's just like already off to a rough start. So that's the thing. Or maybe I just, I still actually have old fashioned devotional books next to my
Yep.
bed. Maybe I should just pick those up, read those, and then go about my day. Um, and worry about the app ones maybe later on after I'm already, maybe that could be like a halfway recharge point or something.
Hmm.
But definitely good, something for me to think about. Um, who are three people who've inspired you or you can credit for making you the person you are today?
Um, so I can credit a gentleman by the name of Jess Medina. I can credit my father, and then I can credit my wife. Um, and all three of them have probably the same stern tie, which is you need to go invest in yourself to be the best for us. And so obviously I'm married to my wife. Jess Medina is my best friend. And then my father, being the best son I can be for my father is that's a real task, right? Like it's a real goal.
Yeah,
And so I thought that it was interesting with a little bit of reflection that would be those are the people that have been the most demanding of me being the best version of me.
gotcha. And then what would you want your legacy to be when you're no longer when Pat Otis is no longer here on in this world with us?
Well, I would like my legacy to be that people never forget the face of their father, which is the idea that you have a responsibility for the name that you have and that you have to represent that with honor, which means you have to make clear and concise decisions in advance before you do something.
Hmm. Man, that's some advice I could have used back in my early 20s.
Same thing. Same thing.
But
That's why I give it now. Hopefully
yeah,
someone will hear it and be like, I'm going to do that.
but thankfully, before my father passed, I was able to receive that blessing from turning my life around, and I always try to still to this day, honor his memory and legacy. So um good advice. Favorite toy as a child?
Favorite toy as a child, I would have had to have said would be either a BB gun or a slingshot.
Nice. I had those too. Of course, I didn't shoot my eye out, just maybe a
Yeah,
couple people's windows that I shouldn't have, but
yeah.
um and then you know, you're so with Skillbridge, you haven't retired yet. You're basically still
Correct.
on, active duty. But what message do you have for our military brothers and sisters that are currently serving overseas?
So I think the most simple message I could say would be kind to your shipmate, your battle buddy, your wingman, and be violently loyal to them, which means execute violence at the time of violence when the enemy presents violence.
Amen. Well, man, Pat, it's been great talking with you. Thank you for the giving me this time. I think we had a hell of a 200th episode here.
Hmm.
And I'm glad uh, honored that you were the man for this. And I look forward to, keeping in touch and hopefully catching you at Danny Wimmer event in the future. Um,
Absolutely.
if you wouldn't mind, before I let you go, would you mind cutting a promo ID for the show?
Absolutely.
And usually, I mean, and you are still active, so if you could do this for me right now, introduce yourself at your rate,
Mhm.
and you're listening to today's Boondoggle.
Okay, one sec. Okay,
All set.
okay. Hello, this is Command Master Chief Patrick Otis. You are listening to today's Boondoggle.
Thank you, Master Chief. Thanks, Pat. I
No problem.
appreciate the time, man. And like I said, I'll definitely keep in touch. And uh, if I can make it, if I could somehow swing down to Louisville for Louder Than Life, I'll hit you up.
Absolutely, man. It'll be a pleasure to have you there. All right. Take care,
All
Beth.
right. Take care.
Bye.